So I want you to picture the classic archetype of the mad professor. You know, the exact image I mean.
Right, the wild hair, maybe a bit of a frantic energy.
Yeah, exactly. That kinetic energy that makes them kind of hard to keep up with.
Yeah.
They're usually holding some strange contraption that looks like it might explode in a shower of sparks.
And everyone around them just calls them Doc.
Yes. It's a trope we see in movies constantly, right? From Back to the Future to, well, those old black and white monster movies.
It's the standard shorthand for the genius who is too busy thinking about the secrets of the universe to worry about social norms.
Or combing their hair.
Exactly. But what if I told you that this exact character actually existed? And not only did he exist, but he was a calm, critical force behind winning World War II.
And perhaps even more surprisingly, he is the reason machines can read your handwriting today.
It's just wild. Today on the Deep Dive, we are unpacking the life and work of Alan William Mark Coombs, known to his colleagues, and soon to you, simply as Doc. And to guide us through this, we've pulled together a stack of biographical records, some Wikipedia entries regarding his work at the Post Office Research Station.
Which is way more exciting than it sounds, I promise.
It really is. And we're also looking at historical accounts of the Colossus computer.
So the mission today isn't just to talk about a guy who built a computer. We aren't just, listing out specs and dates.
No, the goal is to move Alan Coombs out of the shadows. He often gets listed as a footnote next to bigger names like Alan Turing or Tommy Flowers.
Right.
But we want to explore the bridge Coombs built. He is the missing link between wartime code breaking and the modern automation of information. We're connecting the high-stakes world of cracking the Enigma and Lorenz ciphers to the everyday miracle of a machine reading a postcode on a letter.
Which is a crazy trajectory when you think about it, from
Yeah.
saving the free world to...
Sorting the mail.
Yeah. So let's get into it. Let's meet the doc.
Let's do it.
We have to start with the stats, just to kind of ground us in reality here. Alan Coombs. Born in Bristol, England in 1911.
And looking at his early life, you see immediately that he didn't just stumble into engineering as a hobby. He was an academic heavyweight from the very beginning. He went to the University of Glasgow, getting his Bachelor of Science in 1932.
Oh?
But he didn't stop there. He went on to earn a PhD in 1936.
Can we just pause on that for a second? A PhD in the 1930s, that feels pretty significant.
Oh, it was incredibly rare compared to today. In the 30s, engineering was often viewed as a practical trade. You learned by doing, by apprenticing.
Right, getting your hands dirty.
Exactly. To have a doctorate in it meant you were operating at a theoretical level that most people just didn't touch.
Yeah.
You were dealing with the physics of electricity, the deep math of signal processing, not just soldering wires.
Right. And he wasn't done accumulating letters after his name either.
No, in that same year, 1932, he also received an ARTC award, which was later designated as the ARCST from the University of Strathclyde. So by the time he is 25 years old, he is highly credentialed. He understands the math, the physics, and the mechanics.
He's a double threat. But here is the contrast that I love, and it's what makes him such a great character to dive into. Despite all those degrees, despite being one of the smartest guys in any room, nobody called him Dr. Coombs or Professor.
No, he was universally known as Doc.
Doc. It's affectionate, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it also implies a certain kind of personality.
It does. And the descriptions of him are so vivid. He wasn't your stiff academic in a tweed suit. He had this notable facial tic.
Yeah, and looking at the source material, there was a really interesting note on this. The biographers mentioned that today, this behavior would likely be classed under Tourette's syndrome.
But back in the 30s and 40s, they didn't really have that diagnosis handy, or at least it wasn't socially understood in the same way.
Exactly. So to his colleagues, it just became part of the package. Combined with his intellect and his intense, rapid-fire way of speaking, it just contributed to this mad professor vibe.
It wasn't seen as a disability. It was seen as a quirk of high intelligence.
It makes him feel so real to me. You can just imagine him in the lab, maybe twitching slightly, mind racing a mile a minute, holding a soldering iron, and muttering about voltage.
And I think acknowledging that persona adds a really vital layer of humanity to the machines we are going to talk about.
Yeah.
We often think of the people at Bletchley Park or Dollis Hill as these stoic, robotic figures.
The stiff upper lip.
Right. But here you have Doc with his tics and his brilliance leading a team. It suggests that the intense discipline required for his work was balanced by a very distinct, very human personality.
It disrupts the idea that you have to be boring to be brilliant.
Perfectly said.
So we have the man. Now let's put him in the history books. We are moving the timeline to World War II, And we have to talk about his workplace, the Post Office Research Station at Dollis Hill. Now, if you're not British, Post Office Research Station sounds like a place where they, I don't know, test envelope glue or design new stamps.
It sounds incredibly mundane, I know, but Dollis Hill was essentially the British equivalent of Bell Labs, or a secret DARPA facility today. It was a hub of high-level electronics work.
Because the post office ran the telephone network.
Exactly. So they had the best experts on valves, vacuum tubes, and signal processing in the entire country. If you wanted to build something electronic in the 1940s, this is where you went.
And this brings us to the big one, the Colossus computer.
Specifically the Mark II. Now, this is a crucial distinction we need to make. Usually when you hear about Colossus, you hear the name Tommy Flowers. He designed the original Colossus, the Mark I.
Which was the world's first programmable electronic digital computer.
It was. But the Mark I was essentially the prototype. It was the proof of concept. It proved you could use thousands of vacuum tubes to process data without them all burning out instantly, which, by the way, was the prevailing wisdom at the time. People thought it couldn't be done.
But Coombs comes in for the Mark II.
Yes. Coombs was a principal designer of the Mark II, which was the production version of the machine used at Bletchley Park for code breaking.
What was the difference? Was it just a software update or?
Oh, no, it was a massive hardware leap. The Mark I had about 1,600 valves. The Mark II, which Coombs helped engineer and eventually took charge of, had 2,400 valves. It was 5 times faster than the original. We are talking about a machine that could read paper tape at 5,000 characters per second.
5,000 characters per second. In 1944, that is just mind-boggling.
To give you a physical sense of that, the tape was moving so fast, about 30 miles per hour, that the edges of the paper tape acted like a saw. If the tape broke and hit you, it would cut you open.
Okay, that is actually terrifying.
It was a beast of a machine. It generated so much heat from those 2,400 valves that people worked in their undershirts even in the dead of winter. And here is the pivot point in the story. Tommy Flowers, the visionary behind the concept, moved on to other projects.
He left the Colossus work.
He did. He left to focus on other things. And who took over leadership of the project?
What?
Doc Coombs. He became the guy keeping these massive heat-generating machines running. And remember, they weren't just building one. They were trying to build a fleet of them to defeat Nazi encryption before D-Day.
I put a pause on the why here. We throw around terms like Nazi encryption.
Yeah.
What were they actually trying to do? Because most people know the Enigma story, thanks to all the movies. Was this Enigma?
No, and that's a very common misconception. Enigma was used for tactical stuff, tanks talking to submarines, that sort of thing. Coombs and Colossus were attacking the Lorenz cipher.
Which was different.
It was even more complex than Enigma. The Lorenz was used for high-level communication between Hitler and his top generals. It used 12 different wheels to scramble the message. And Colossus didn't read the message directly. It used statistical analysis to find the starting positions of those wheels. It was essentially looking for patterns in the noise.
So Coombs is managing a team that is building these massive electronic brains to hunt for statistical patterns in German radio signals.
Precisely. And if they got it right, the Allies knew exactly what Hitler was planning before his own generals did.
I want to capture the atmosphere of that time. Because Coombs actually wrote about this later on. And the quote he gave, it gives me chills every time I read it. He said, "No member of our team could ever forget the fellowship, the sense of purpose, and above all, the breathless excitement of those days."
Breathless excitement.
It's so evocative, isn't it? Usually war stories are about grim determination or fear or just doing your duty.
It really is unique. You have to remember, this was a secret bunker, essentially. They were working on technology that didn't officially exist. If they failed, convoys sank. If they failed, the invasion of Europe might fail. And yet, he calls it breathless excitement.
It sounds like the thrill of discovery. Like they knew they were building the future, even if they couldn't tell anyone about it.
That is the key. They were inventing the digital age in the dark. They were solving problems no human had ever faced before, like how to synchronize 2,000 electronic switches perfectly. The fellowship he mentions, that camaraderie, must have been incredibly tight. They were the only people on Earth who understood what they were doing.
And that secrecy, that is the double-edged sword of this whole story, because that secrecy didn't end when the war did.
No, in fact, it got tighter. Winston Churchill ordered the Colossus machines to be dismantled, destroyed.
That hurts to hear, just smashing up history.
It was the dawn of the Cold War. He wanted to keep the fact that the British could read these codes a secret from the Soviets, who were using similar technology. So for decades, the work Coombs and his team did was classified, top secret.
Imagine building the first computer, literally changing the course of human history, and not being able to tell anyone for 30 years. Not your wife, not your kids.
It is almost unimaginable today, where we post our achievements instantly. But that was the reality. Coombs went back to work, and the world went on thinking the Americans invented the computer with E9S in 1946.
But Coombs knew better.
He knew, but he kept his oath. This silence lasted until 1976.
Enter Professor Brian Randell. This is the big turning point.
Right. So jump forward to the mid-70s. Brian Randell is a computer scientist researching the history of the field. And he keeps hearing whispers, rumors about a British machine. He starts digging around because he's prepping for a conference at the Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico.
The home of the atomic bomb. Kind of a fitting place for revealing massive government secrets.
Exactly. And he manages to get something incredible. The British government finally decides to loosen the grip.
Just a little bit.
Just a crack. In late 1975, they release a series of captioned photographs from the Public Record Office, and Randell obtained permission to present a paper on the wartime development of the Colossi at the Post Office Research Station.
So picture the scene. It's 1976, Los Alamos. A room full of top-tier scientists and historians. Randell presents this paper, and the room just explodes.
It was a total rock star moment for engineers. You have to understand, these people thought they knew the history of their field inside and out. Suddenly, Randell is standing there saying, no, actually, there was a programmable electronic computer 2 years before ENIAC. The interest was so high that they actually had to organize a special evening meeting just to handle all the questions.
And guess who was there to answer them?
Doc Coombs and Brian Randell.
That has to be one of the most satisfying moments of Coombs' life.
I would imagine so. Standing there, finally able to say, yes, we did this. Yes, it worked. Randell later published an article called The First Electronic Computer. This was the moment the history books were fundamentally rewritten.
And Coombs was finally able to bask in that revelation. After 30 years of holding his tongue, he could finally explain what that breathless excitement was all about.
It's a powerful validation for him. But what I find even more interesting, and this is where this deep dive really gets into the weeds, is that Coombs didn't just retire after the war. He didn't just sit around waiting for the Secrecy Act to expire.
No, he kept building. And this is where the story gets really surprising for me. We go from cracking Nazi codes to sorting the mail.
It sounds like a massive downgrade, doesn't it? Like going from being James Bond to working at the DMV.
It really does.
Yeah.
Why did he make that shift?
Well, because technologically, it was actually a massive leap forward.
Okay, let's unpack that. The war ends. Coombs is still at Dollis Hill.
First, he worked on something called the MOSAIC computer. It stands for Ministry of Supply Automatic Integrator and Computer. It's a bit of a neglected fragment of history, but it was mainly used for calculating radar data and aircraft trajectories. So it shows he stayed on the cutting edge of pure computing.
But then comes the big shift.
Yes, he takes over the scientific side of R14.
R14. Sounds like a droid from Star Wars.
It was the division working on postal mechanization. Specifically, optical character recognition, or OCR.
Okay, so the problem is people write addresses on envelopes, and sorting them by hand is just way too slow.
Precisely. The post office was drowning in mail. They desperately needed a machine to read the envelope and sort it into the right bin automatically.
Which, honestly, sounds harder than cracking Enigma. Have you seen some people's handwriting?
Oh, absolutely.
My doctor's handwriting is basically encryption.
It is exponentially more difficult in many ways, and that is the connection here. If you think about it, Coombs went from looking for patterns in encrypted data, identifying the statistical anomalies in the Lurin cipher, to looking for patterns in human squiggles on an envelope.
Oh, wow. It's all pattern recognition.
Exactly. In crypto, the noise is the encryption algorithm hiding the message. In OCR, the noise is the messy ink, the bad handwriting, the coffee stain on the envelope. Coombs had to figure out how to teach a machine to look at a squiggle and say, that is statistically likely to be the letter A.
And he's doing this in the 1950s. There are no neural networks, no AI as we know it today.
No cloud computing, just hardwired logic and analog circuits. He moved to the new BT Research Center at Martlesham in Suffolk and led the work that resulted in early postcode reading machines. He had to figure out how to interpret lines and curves electronically.
So every time a machine automatically sorts my mail today, or I scan a document on my phone and it magically turns into text, I can trace a little bit of that back to Doc Coombs.
You certainly can. He pioneered the theory of how computers interact with the messy, unstructured real world. He moved computing from calculation, just adding numbers to perception.
And he wasn't just building these things in a dark room. He was teaching people how they worked. Which brings us to the flash gun and the caltrop.
Yes, Coombs was a frequent lecturer, and true to his doc persona, he was not boring. He wanted people to understand how we see so we could understand how machines might see.
I really wish I had a professor like this. Describe his favorite trick for us.
So he wanted to demonstrate feature detection in the human visual system. To do this, he would use a flash gun, basically a high-intensity strobe light like you'd see on an old camera, but much, much more powerful.
I can see the mad professor vibes returning in full force.
Oh, yeah. He would darken the room, flash this intense light, and because of the persistence of vision in the human eye, the way an image lingers on your retina for a split second, the audience would literally see a character, like a letter or a shape, disintegrate fragment by fragment.
That is so cool. So he's breaking down vision into bits.
He was proving that our eyes don't just take a static photo, they process features, lines, curves, angles. And he used this to explain a concept he called the caltrop.
The caltrop, like the spiky weapon you throw on the ground to pop tires.
Yes, the shape is the key there. A caltrop has 4 points. No matter how you drop it, one point is always sticking up. Coombs used this physical object to explain multidimensional space.
Okay, you're going to have to explain that to me like I'm 5, because multidimensional space sounds like pure science fiction.
Fair enough. Imagine every letter isn't just a picture, but a collection of scores. A score for curviness, a score for straight lines, a score for holes in the shape. If you map those scores in a 3D graph, all the A's cluster in one area and all the B's cluster in another area. It's about mapping features in space.
So he was trying to teach people that machines could see by converting shapes into math.
Exactly. He was deconstructing vision to reconstruct it digitally. He's trying to get people to visualize what we now call a feature space, which is totally fundamental to how modern AI works.
It's amazing to think about him standing in front of a chalkboard, flashing lights, twitching with excitement, trying to explain to a room of confused people how a machine could learn to see.
And doing it decades before computer vision became a buzzword in Silicon Valley. He was laying the theoretical groundwork for everything from facial recognition to self-driving cars.
So what does this all mean for us? We've gone from a PhD in Glasgow to the high-stakes secrecy of Bletchley Park to the flashing lights of lecture halls and automated mail sorters.
Sadly, Alan Coombs passed away on January 30th, 1995 in Yelton, Devon. He was 83 years old.
But he left quite a mark on the world.
He represents the unsung technical brilliance that underpins our modern life. We love the stories of the lone genius, the Turing, the Einstein, but Coombs was the guy who made things work. He didn't just build the hardware with Colossus. He pioneered the theory of pattern recognition.
He bridged the gap between a machine that calculates numbers and a machine that actually understands the world around it.
Exactly. Without that bridge, without his work on OCR and pattern recognition, our digital world would look very, very different. He helped computers open their eyes.
I want to leave you with a thought to mull over. We often think of computer vision or AI reading text as a modern invention, something from the last 10 or 20 years. But consider Doc Coombs in that bunker in 1944, or in his lab in the 50s.
It raises a fascinating question.
Was that breathless excitement he felt just about winning the war? Or did he already see a future where machines could read, see, and understand us? Maybe the mad professor wasn't mad at all. Maybe he just saw the future before the rest of us did.
I think he certainly did.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive into the life of Alan Coombs.
It's been a pleasure.
See you next time.